Well, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. A couple housekeeping things. I want to make sure everybody signs up. One of the reasons why, we're very, first of all, happy and honored to host Benn, not only because he's a candidate for governor, which is very important, but his stint and work with the NAACP and his work for the community. So I think it's very important. We wanted to kick off our 2018. All right, this is the last meeting in 2017. 2017 was quite a year. So we're not going to watch, rinse, and repeat 2018. So we're going to make 2018 be a different year. And so we wanted to start off with getting people excited. We wanted to bring Mr. Jealous in for two reasons. I figured that people would come out so you could find where the place was. So I didn't go star power for that. But beyond that, we really wanted to, we got a lot of work to do. Yeah. There's a lot of potential, a lot of possibilities. And I know I want to thank the TWW people here, the Indivisible people here, because one of the things, and when we go to our January meeting, we're going to talk about interfacing with the other groups. I want to thank Mr. Guthrie for being here, and for his group. I know Mr. Helton's not here, but whatever. We have to put our differences, we don't have differences. Whatever has blocked us from working together, we have to put aside here in Harford County. Harford County used to be a Democratic county. We had the opportunity, we had to work together. So, and we have to stop putting up these walls, these walls of purity. I know, personally, but I've known them interactive, most of your Republican office people in this county. And I've certainly interacted with the people running for your state attorney. And I will say this to you: you have to get out. Look, this is a critical election. And if you don't, I love everybody. I don't like everybody. I love everybody, like my pastor said. I love everybody. I don't like everybody because I have certain feelings. And my feelings, people see them sometimes. But I will say this to you. We have to work with everybody as we love them to make a better community. This thing that's coming out, with this tax proposal, our first district of Maryland, and this election is also going to end up controlling the 2020 redistricting. So we need to make sure that who we get in our delegate offices.
Me?
There you go.
I'll be in charge of redistricting.
And you see, we'll be responsive. So that being said, I'll say the rest for our next meeting in January. Third Mondays all the time. I want to introduce, I would say honorable, but Omarosa messed that up.
Never been confused for.
You're better looking. Well, that was a sexist joke.
Too much fun. My name is Benn. It's nice to be here with you. I'm a former national president of the NAACP. Partner at Kapor Capital, one of the Baltimore office of a Silicon Valley-based investment firm, investing in double bottom line companies. I'm running for governor. My running mate is Susie Turnbull, who is the former chair of the Maryland Party, and who was vice chair of the National Party under Howard Dean, and helped to popularize his 50-state strategy. We are very much running a 24-county strategy in this race. I'm running for governor not because I need a job. I've got a couple of those. I'm running for governor because I have a vision that we can be moving forward. Our families can be moving forward no matter who's in the White House. We can create a state in which everybody has health care. Health care is something that we can afford, not something that chokes our small businesses, drives 80-year-old women back into the workforce to pay for their pharmaceuticals, or is our leading cause of bankruptcy, as it is now in this state. I believe we can create a state in which our schools are fully funded. My mom sued Western High School for Girls in Baltimore when she was 12. so she could desegregate it when she was 15. She was in the first class of black girls to go all the way through Western. I started my career at Thurgood Marshall's law firm, the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. And when you grow up in the NAACP, and I'm a 5th generation member, what you know is what Thurgood Marshall knows. Until we fully fund our schools, none of this really works. And if we're honest, frankly, the so-called racial achievement gap sits inside of a much larger class-based achievement gap. You can go out to Allegheny County and see white children being as underserved in Western Maryland as you find black children being underserved in West Baltimore. And you can close both those gaps the same way. But 80% of that is resources. The number one resource they need is a highly qualified teacher. And about 20% of that is parenting. And there's a role for the state in getting older parents to volunteer and match them up with new parents to help them learn how to parent better. But if I do nothing else, I will make sure that that casino money and that lottery money, they promised would make sure that our children that promise is kept. I have a vision that we can put our state on the side of our small businesses. It starts with ending the foolishness that is maintaining 19th century patterns of exclusion in the 21st century, as Governor Hogan has done, by launching a $200 million industry, the medical cannabis industry, and excluding any majority person of color owned firm from holding one of more than 2 dozen licenses. And the state is 30% black. It shouldn't even be mathematically possible. And we have plenty of sophisticated black entrepreneurs, and Asian, and Native American, and Latino, and all of them have been excluded from his setting up an industry that's on its way to being a $1 billion industry. But it goes much further than that. You know, every time that we put up a whole bunch of money as taxpayers to attract a corporation to our state, we're taking a gamble that in 5 years some other state will offer them a better deal and they'll leave. Well, if we can accept that's a gamble, then we should be willing to put our state also on the side of our small businesses, because they don't leave. And there's nothing, I spend all day, every day, growing small businesses into big businesses. That's what it means to invest in tech startups. And there's nothing that creates sort of a more powerful economy than one that builds upon itself. And that means you have to invest in your small business sector. And that's not just startups, it's stores like my cousin's flower shop that she opened right after the uprisings in West Baltimore, where her biggest fear isn't not getting enough clients, it's having too many clients. And so we can have the state underwrite lines of credit for our newest, fastest growing businesses. And frankly, we can use the latest technology to better analyze risk than you ever will be able to do with 2 years of tax returns and a FICO score. And it's a vision says that we can be much safer if we actually invest in what works in law enforcement rather than what feels good. We have a governor who wants to feel like, by golly, the judge gives you a sentence, then you should get that sentence. Well, why, governor, should a politician tie a judge's hand? Especially if all of the social science tells us that truth in sentencing was A, definitely expensive, and B, didn't work. We've already played that movie. It's called The War on Drugs. It was a failure. And quite frankly, the sooner we end mass incarceration, the better. Now let's be really clear here on two things. One, America does not just have the most incarcerated black and brown people on the planet. Again, go out to Western Maryland, you'll find we also have the most, or the Eastern Shore, the most incarcerated white people on the planet. In Maryland, politicians will tell you, oh, we passed our Justice Reinvestment Act. That's the most milquetoast, watered down. I mean, Georgia and Texas are shrinking their prison systems faster than we are. When was Maryland supposed to lag behind Georgia and Texas? But unless you think this is about a conversation about somebody else's kids, really demystify what's been happening to our public universities. See, our states have two total institutions that we cram full of 18 to 35-year-olds. We have state prisons and public universities. State prisons are much more expensive per person than public universities. When you cram a whole bunch into one, you don't have as much money for the other. As the president of Penn State put it to me once, so what was your greatest leadership challenge? He said, oh, it's like Groundhog Day every year. Every year I go up to the state, every year I go up to the state capitol, try to keep so much more money from going to the state pen. Wow. So more come to Penn State. The state after state, what you'll see is since 1970, the incarceration rates have gone up. As they've gone up, spending in public higher education has come down. As that's gone down, tuition rates have gone up. You might expect debts go up, defaults go up. Here's the thing we're not paying attention to. And I was just sitting with the head of one of the largest polling agencies, done a lot of work on the future of business in our country, and they just published a report called The Great American Slowdown. The student debt has gone up. Young people have started fewer and fewer new businesses every decade. It's killing our growth and productivity. So we can end mass incarceration, and when we do, we can cut the cost of public universities. And that's important. We got my family out of poverty in West Baltimore. Grandma and granddad move up in 1941. Granddad goes to work for the B&O Railroad. Grandma goes to work for Planned Parenthood. They move into McCullough Homes housing projects. A decade or so later, they're living on Pulaski Street, which is not that much better, never has been. But when I come along, they're living in Ashburton. And if you understand West Baltimore, that's like the Jeffersons. So the question is, what the heck happened to get up to Pulaski Street? Ashburton. And the answer is my grandfather went to the University of Maryland School of Law for 1 year. And that allowed him to become a probation officer. And I got that household their second union job. The first was my grandmother, who became a social worker. She actually trained Barbara McCulsky. Barbara teared up. We were at the Emergent Maryland event. She teared up. She said, "You're Mamie Bland's grandson." I said, "That's right. Your grandma helped train me. She made sure I didn't feel awkward when I was a young social worker." I was like, "Wow, Grandma did a great job." Because I've never seen you look awkward in my life. But here's the thing. When my granddad went to the University of Maryland School of Law, the third or fourth class of black students permitted after the end of segregation, tuition was less than $200. Kept up with inflation. By 1970, it was $410. If it kept keeping up with inflation today, it'd be a little under $2,600. It's over $31,000. Ask yourself what that does to a young person. You'll be pretty close to the one. So what we're fundamentally talking about in this campaign is building tomorrow today. And that's what we do in Maryland when we are at our best. In 2013, I was named Marylander of the Year by the Baltimore Sun. Why? Because the year before, I had led the successful effort to abolish the death penalty in the state after our own governor had tried and failed a few years earlier. I had co-chaired the successful effort to pass the DREAM Act in Maryland. I had helped expand voting rights and pass sensible gun safety reform and put organizers on the ground in Baltimore City and Prince George's County to deliver the black vote for marriage equality. They told us all those battles would be impossible. They told us any one of them would be hard enough, probably impossible. We got them all done in 1 year. How? By building a bigger, more robust coalition of Marylanders than anybody thought was possible. By essentially adopting the motto of Three Musketeers, all for one and one for all. And so that's what I'm here tonight to invite you into. It's a campaign that, even if you just look at the two running mates, is the most unifying campaign, I'd say, in the country right now. Where we are unifying around the values, the vision that connects all of us. Fundamentally, American vision that what bad public policies have done, good public policies can undo, and when you put the government on the side of the people, in fact, better yet, when you put the people back in charge of their state. The working families of Maryland back in charge of their state. Things can get better. Can get much better, much faster. That's been my family's experience here in Maryland. We've lived the American dream because we first invested in the Maryland dream. Our state's supposed to be a place where it's a little easier than everywhere else to get ahead. But we're slipping. We're heading in the wrong direction. We're schools are already down from 1st to 5th. We need to keep them falling. So thank you for your time. I'm happy to take any questions. We can do this. Let's go get it done.
Very interesting what you said about the education.
Introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dion Guthrie, former councilman for 12 years on Harford County. I'm running back for the position. Interesting what said about education and incarceration. I think right now, last numbers I saw, it costs us about $35,000 to incarcerate somebody for a year.
47.
And just 31, what is it now?
47.
Now it's 47, okay. I haven't checked it in a while, so now see how quick it goes? So it's 47,000, and it costs 31,000 for somebody, a year, for somebody to get educated, you know? So it's costing us more money and to put somebody in jail than it is, and then the person paying the 31,000, that's coming out of their pocket, whereas the 47,000 is also coming out of our pocket.
The person that comes out with 31,000 is better able to get a job than the one that comes out from the 47,000 can't find.
Yeah, you're almost better off committing a crime, okay, where you can go to jail for maybe 4 to 5 years, okay, let them educate you, okay, because they'll pay for it. Then you become an attorney, okay? And then you come out of jail and you're an attorney.
You know, I wish
Isn't that ridiculous? But
yeah,
that's true.
Look, I wish that it worked that way. Of course, we've now blocked people in prison from getting Pell Grants. So, you can't even get educated. And I've been in prisons where 75% of the inmates are too illiterate to read a McDonald's menu. They can languish there for 25 years and they come out just as illiterate. And then, you know, if they overcome the hurdle that is the discrimination against formerly incarcerated people to get a job, say, out of Walmart, they get laid off because they can't read. And so, you know, we have to fundamentally decide that the greatest asset of Maryland is our people. That we cannot condemn children to prison because they're born in the wrong zip code. And that even if you end up in prison, that you have the ability to redeem yourself, and that if you want to, that we're here to help you do that, because we're all better off financially, public safety perspective, everything.
I have a couple questions, but it'll probably tie together.
Sure.
Messaging, democratic messaging. That's one thing that I've heard that's been a difficult issue in terms of we have the good policies, we are fighting a good fight. However, we're so intellectual and we go on and on and on and on that people just kind of, you know, they lose sight. So to me, I'm going to ask you what your slogan is. What is your message in 1 to 2 sentences?
Build a better tomorrow today.
Okay, thank you.
That's
All
what
right.
we're here.
And then also, second question, what are you going to do to increase help in black-owned business? That is something that is highly ignored in this area. In fact, it's almost unrecognized.
I mean, look, you know, in Prince George's County, the black vendor spends 2%. Think about that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if we're not doing it well in Prince George's County, and that's been my life. Long before I ran the NAACP, I ran a trade association, 200 black community businesses, 200 black newspapers. Jake Oliver, the publisher of the Afro, was my lord. And what I know is, one, you know, we have all the laws we need in Maryland. We just need to enforce them. One. Two, there are anything that we do, you know, if we're committed to inclusion, anything that we do to support our small business sector will be disproportionately relevant to veterans, black folks, brown folks, women. So we disproportionately start businesses. Two. And three, we need to embrace the diversity of our state as what it is, which is part of what makes us a better place to bring a large business. And I'll give you an example of that. Folks, you see the movie Hidden Figures?
Yeah, it's a great movie.
We're like literally a hidden state. Right now, in the Silicon Valley, where my firm is based, the world's largest tech companies are under 2 types of pressure. One is they're projecting 1 million programmer shortage in the next 5 to 6 years. And so they're looking for other places to build expansion campuses. So you're seeing expansion campuses built in Pittsburgh, in the Research Triangle in New York City. They're not being built here. St. Louis. Two, they're also under pressure because their numbers, both gender and race, including numbers, have gone way backwards in the last 30 years. 30 years ago, HP, the programmers were 30% women. Today, Google, they're 15. 30 years ago, Hewlett Packard, building computers, the programmers were about 10, 12% black. Google today is 2-3%. In Maryland, 20%, almost 20% of our computer engineers, computer scientists, computer programmers are black. And that, along with the fact it's a much more affordable place, and we have a great STEM workforce, is a reason, as I've said, that we shouldn't just be talking about like recruiting the FBI to Maryland, but recruiting FB, recruiting Facebook. Well, if you do that, and if you do it where you're putting the diversity of your state up front as a way to attract them in, then that should have implications for their vendor spend.
Thank you.
Okay, right here, and we'll go back.
Good evening, sir.
Stand up.
Sorry, we both conflicts. What you do.
Yeah.
My name is Devin Ford. Quick question. I know if you were looking at other states and the successes they have with their policy plans, and just sort of seeing, like sometimes it's a universal answer that can apply to most states. Like, for example, I wanted to know your opinion about the feasibility of like, what Colorado did was legalize marijuana. And they took the revenue generated from like legalized marijuana and just put it into the school system.
Yeah.
So I know you mentioned like the lottery, whole lottery. I know it's like a huge issue in Maryland, but like, do you think like, is it feasible just to legalize marijuana in itself and just take the money from that and just put it in our schools?
Gotcha. Yeah, so I don't think we could possibly go to the voters of Maryland saying we want you to do this and we'll put the money in the schools until we actually kept our promise from the last two times. You know what I'm saying? Right? So there's like fool me once, right? Fool me twice. Now we're beyond fool me twice. So we've got to go back. We've got to clean that up. Question of cannabis legalization for adult use is something that should be on the table that we should look into. I started looking into the violence in Baltimore City. That's where my family's from, family still is. I teach criminal justice policy at Princeton University on Mondays. And I had asked an ex-BPD officer to talk to three commanders about the violence in the city. Said that there was disagreement amongst the three of those on what was happening in the last 2 years. But they were all three were certain that in the last 10 years, half the killings have been one group of weed dealers enforcing on another group of weed dealers. A trade like heroin is less violent because it's more stable. Violence in the drug trade is about enforcing territory. Right? The harder a drug is to source, the less likely somebody encroaches on your territory. The easier a drug is to source. It turns out weed is actually a weed. The more likely somebody encroaches on your territory. When you encroach on your territory, so for a whole bunch of reasons, whether it's getting money out of the pocket of MS-13, or it's stemming the bloodletting in the city, or it's the fact that 75% of American adults have used it. And it has all sorts of medicinal values our state's already recognized. I think that should be an open and robust conversation.
Hello, thank you for coming out. My name is Cassandra Beverly. I, like the sister here, I'm concerned about messaging. One of the things that I've heard that disturbs me is that the party that knows how to win elections doesn't know how to govern, and the party that doesn't know how to win elections knows how to govern. And I guess you can kind of figure out which is which. And I'm very concerned that in a time when people don't care about facts and figures and logic, you're not going to win the battle on, the most logical argument.
Sure.
So what is your strategy for winning?
Organizing. Governor Hogan, we've seen a popular one-term Republican governor before.
Yes.
Let's not get, so I start shaking our boots when we're coming up and doing something a second time that we did not too long ago. Governor Hogan only became governor because 2014 was the lowest Democratic turnout on record, period. Nationally. In Maryland, it's the lowest on record since 1942. 125,000 Democrats who showed up in 2010 did not vote in 2014 in Maryland. We won by 63,000 votes, which is to say that if we turned out the voters who turned out in 2010, we would have lost by 62. Not only is my chair the person who, sorry, not only is my running mate the woman who was chair in 2010, but my campaign manager is the man who was executive director of the party and the head of the coordinated campaign in 2010. He put 10 times more organizers on the ground in 2010 than our party did in 2014. We know how to win. When I was, and that's a difference between me and the other, the other leading candidates in this race, is that I've proven my ability to turn out voters. In 2012, the NAACP under my leadership, it's called the Unsung Heroes of Obama's re-election. And let's not forget, we were not so sure he was going to get re-elected by Van Jones on CNN on election night, because we turned out almost 1.4 million unlikely voters. We turn out the likely voters, we will win. We turn out unlikely voters, we will wallop him, and that's what I'll be focused on.
Thank you.
Rosemary?
Hi, Rosemary O'Brien. I wanted to find out, what's your vision for Maryland that's different from that of the governor? And more specifically, what do you have in store for Harford and Cecil counties?
Sure. What's different is making sure that all of our schools are well funded. What's different is ending mass incarceration. The governor's right in line with Jeff Sessions and Donald Trump and his desire to restart the failed war on drugs. What's different is that I don't believe in distracting law enforcement by turning them into immigration agents. And to say a little more on that, that idea is neither radical nor new. Daryl Gates, the police chief of Los Angeles of Rodney King infamy, like a broken clock, was right once. INS approached him and said, please, we want you to help deport this long list of people. He said, I'm sorry, do you have any warrants for any of them? They said, no. He said, well, I can't help you. They said, why not? He said, I'm a police officer. And our job is to keep people safe. And the day that I mistake myself for an immigration officer, the immigrants will stop talking to my police officers. Not the ones who don't have papers, like all of them. And then we'll all get less safe. Why? Because we won't have the information we need to solve crimes, but also because criminal syndicates will start aggressively victimizing their communities, knowing that they won't talk to us, which will only strengthen those syndicates, which will eventually make all of us less safe. So, those are the types of things. You can also expect me to be laser focused on ending this student debt crisis. We'll start by doing what Baltimore City has done, making our community colleges free across the state. That allows us to then not just push arts and sciences education, but trade education deeper into our high schools through our community colleges, which will then retain a lot more of our girls, but a whole lot more of our boys.
Yes.
Two will follow what Cuomo did up in New York, and will make our public universities essentially free for families earning up to like $125,000, $150,000 in that range. It's not every family, but it's a whole lot of families. And then over time, as you heard me say, we will reverse engineer what's happened. With the rise of mass incarceration and the destruction of public universities, we'll flip those priorities and get back to building our universities and training our business. So those are the types of things that make me different from him. And oh, by the way, on the environment, I'll sign the Paris Accord. Ask questions once I talk more about the environment.
My name is Wasina Davis. I've seen you a lot recently on AM Joy. Either AM Joy or CNN. I know Reverend Scott was on there giving you a hard time. I think it was CNN.
Yeah, that was MSNBC, Alex Witt, and he was just screaming at me. He didn't give me a hard time. He gave the host and Reverend Sharps a very hard time.
Yeah,
and then I gave him a hard time for being the rudest representative of the White House I've ever seen. Maybe not this White House, but
which is hard.
Most White House.
Well, at least he didn't curse. Because Anthony scared
he
me.
was so out of control.
We did?
He was so out of control.
What?
Yeah, he was. I think he also threatened challenge Al Sharpton to a fist fight. I mean, he's a pastor who represents the White House.
So my question is, I was like recently, for example, I got a ticket here in Harford County a couple months back where I walked away with like a $300 ticket. I tried to dispute the ticket in court, and I even took in a recording for the judge to hear my side, because I started recording when the officer became very belligerent and stuff. They didn't want to hear it. Is there anything that you have as far as police accountability when it comes to certain things that they do? And judges?
We need a judiciary that reflects the people of the state. And that's demographically, but it's also just like perspective and spirit. And there's reason to be concerned that our judges in Maryland are charging bails, for instance. These are just like numbers you can look at. Bails in Baltimore tend to be 5 times higher per infraction than New York City. Doesn't make any sense. So you can count on me to create a judiciary that reflects the electorate of the state in terms of gender, in terms of ethnicity, to nominate judges who are really on the side of the people, as opposed to corporations, and to make sure that we really invest in recruiting, retaining, and training officers who are there first and foremost to serve the people. My grandfather was in law enforcement in Baltimore for 30 years. He was a probation officer. He retired as the chief juvenile probation officer for the Western District. And the Western District, if you haven't hung out in West Baltimore, there's a reason why The Wire has credibility with folks in Baltimore. And so my childhood was the 70s and the 80s, and I said to my grandfather, fourth grade maybe, I said, Granddad, back home, like the 9th and 10th graders scare me, but here like the 5th graders are kind of worse. Spending every summer in West Baltimore, I love it, it's where my family is, but it was getting more and more violent every summer. And I've had 2 family members shot in the last 10 years. And I said, their big brothers must be a trip, aren't you ever worried? He said, of course I am, every day, and that's why I say to all these young men, this is where I live. He write his home address in the back of his business card. This is where I live. I get home at 6 o'clock. If you just had the worst day of your life, which means that they could have killed somebody, you come sit and you don't know what to do. You come sit on my stoop, and we'll go inside, and we'll figure it out together. My grandfather's conviction, and the reason I became a criminologist, was courage today saves lives tomorrow. Courage today makes our community stronger tomorrow. And he wasn't afraid of anyone irrationally, because it was the community where he's rooted. And so, first and foremost, we need law enforcement of every type who are actually rooted in the communities that they serve.
All right.
Get right in there close. My name is Dwight Perry. And since they had the shootings in the churches and everything, out here in this county now, they're really trying to promote carry and conceal. I'd like to know your stand on that.
On election night, in the Republican primary in South Carolina, they do the parties on different nights there. I was driving back from Spartanburg. I'd been out speaking to a group. And something like 75 police cars passing at high speed. Sometimes like a swarm of motorcycles does, but these were cars. And then they all dove down an off-ramp and into a mall. Turned on the radio and couldn't figure it out. And pastor, I said, why don't you look on Twitter and see what's going on? According to Twitter at that moment, in this state, South Carolina, where you can carry a firearm really not concealed, in a jewelry store, in the mall, somebody had seen, and this is when we figured out maybe like half an hour later, so I'll come through. One shopper had seen another shopper's sidearm as they went to pay a bill, and that shopper looked dodgy to them and was about to rob the place. So they pulled out their sidearm, which then made somebody else think they were trying to rob the place. And then everybody else pulled out their sidearms, and apparently there were some shots fired. Everything you just heard in response to that story is my perspective.
Wild, wild west.
Yeah. We don't need, I mean, I was president of the NAACP, I had to go work on the Trayvon Martin case down in Florida. And one of the most disturbing things was to run into what it means to reverse 1,000 years of British and American common law when it comes to self-defense. Self-defense says you have a responsibility to retreat. And if you can't retreat, you are empowered to use equal and opposite force to defend your life. In Florida, they passed something called Stand Your Ground. What was most disturbing that I found was that literally you can have one drug dealer walking down one side of the street, sees another drug dealer from a rival gang walking down the other side of the street. They both reasonably feel threatened by the other, and they start shooting at each other, and nobody goes to jail except for possibly on an illegal weapons charge, but nothing related to endangering all kinds of human life with bullets flying, because they stood their ground. That's not the direction we need to have. Thank you very much.
We want to thank, I want to recognize Ms. Hammer. Lenore brought 2 young people here. So I challenge everybody in here, that first of all, it's very important.
You bring another young person.
Young is like under 40?
Under 50, no. Young enough to be my grade up.
21.
21, okay. And how old are you, son?
I'm 24.
Okay, so it's not young today. Anyway, so we challenge everybody to bring a young person, and I want to thank Juwanda, who kept the AA Dems alive. Remember the first meeting that we had in McDonald's? We were moving across a very cold night, and so I want to honor her. Benina, Denisha, all my people here, thank you so much for coming. Once again, I want to thank Mr. Jealous. We did pass the thing around, those who contributed did, but remember, we're going to start a Get Out the Vote campaign. We've got a bunch of stuff going on in January, so we're going to need your financial support. So come to the meetings and donate, but also you can see us donate online so we can get an infrastructure to keep the stuff going in Harford County. Now I'm going to let everybody go. Thank you, Mr. Jealous. Hold on. One more person I got, yes. Tasha for Certified Home Nursing Solutions. Right?
And this is Sydney Snow. She runs politics for our campaign. We've now been endorsed by over 6 unions, Progressive Maryland, a wide range of groups representing over 200,000 working people in our state. She's the one who's got it done. If you have any questions about the campaign, please see her.
Yeah, and I throw in one word for Sydney, because Sydney is from Jacksonville, so she's a Florida girl like my wife. She went to New York to go to law school, so this is one of the most capable young women, I keep telling you that, most capable young women I have run into. And if you want to look at the quality of the candidate, look at the quality of his staff.
Absolutely.
All right?
That's true.
So thank you, everybody.
You don't support the
And have a
Jaguars,
good
do you?
evening. Y'all can chase
No.
this.
Don't have a team.